Rajeev Chandrasekhar, who's a Rajyasabha MP as well as member of the GST panel now, joins in live from New Delhi. Mr. Chandrasekhar, good evening. Thanks so much for taking time out for us. You know, as my colleague was saying, it's almost a given now that the GST bill will miss its April 2016 deadline. You know, realistically speaking, do you believe there is any hope at all that the government can, pull off a miracle perhaps in the next 3 days?
No, I mean, till the last day of the session, we must hope that the government finds a way to somehow pass this constitutional amendment bill in the Rajyasabha. But I mean, I share your pessimism, and it is not easy to share that pessimism given that a lot of people have worked very hard to get the bill to where it is today. That it seems unlikely, given the Congress's disruptive position in the Parliament, that this would be passed in this session. And if that really turns out to be true, it would be the most tragic, unforgivable fate for this bill, because a lot of consensus building has gone into bringing this bill to where it is today.
Really a hope against hope, isn't it? But, even a watered down version of the land bill doesn't seem to have found any favor with the opposition. Today you had news about how the Congress and the TMC are seeking more time, which basically means that it will now only be taken up in the winter session. That, again, is a big setback for industry, isn't it?
Yeah, I frankly believe that the GST bill is very high on the priority of things for this economy and to set the reform process going, because it is the single biggest indirect taxation reform that we are seeing as a nation since independence. And that it had to be done. It was an important signal to send to both investors, domestic and foreign, that there is a process of reforms and change in the overall taxation and business regime going forward. Land, I believe, is a bill that was destined to be delayed because of the nature of the controversy it got caught itself in. And I think the political unwinding from some of those positions took a lot longer than it should have, and therefore for it to find a place in the next winter session is something that I would have easily predicted a few weeks ago. But for the GST bill to find itself in this political football is absolutely tragic.
So how do you look at it? Who's to be blamed then for this mess? Do you believe that the Congress has been a bit of an irresponsible opposition, or could the government have also handled the situation a little better perhaps?
I think there is an argument that the government could have done a little bit more on consensus building, but the recent days, the actions of the Congress has proved, unfortunately, that they were out to disrupt this session come what may. So even if the government had done its bit in consensus building, I think this was a session that was doomed to be a washout, not because of any issue that needed discussion, not because of any merit in the side of the need to disrupt, but I think the Congress had taken a determined political position to disrupt. For what reason will remain a big mystery. I don't think it's doing itself any great good. It's not covering itself with any great glory by disrupting this in this way, the Parliament session. I think they could have come into this session, made the points that they wanted to make, had a good debate, spotlighted any issues that they wanted the nation to see, but moved ahead and allowed these bills. By the way, the GST bill is a bill that originated in the UPA regime. And I saw no reason during the GST Select Committee meetings that the Congress was opposed to it. They have some points of view, but they were not opposed to it. But to bring politics and this kind of politics into this process of reforms is I mean, I'm saying this in as polite a manner as possible, but very terrible and very unforgivable.
So what happens then? What's the way out really, you think? Because like you said yourself, the monsoon session has been a complete washout, not a single bill being passed, and yet again, politics has gotten the better of economics.
No, there are only two solutions that I can see. One is a solution where all of the opposition parties get together and in some ways get together and pass the bill, either hopefully in this session, because if it's not in this session, then this whole April 1, 2016 deadline is up in the air, and then what happens subsequently is very, very difficult to predict. Or the other solution is that the Congress really says, wakes up and says, look, this is we've done what we had to do. We've made our point. We have a problem with Mrs. Swaraj and her conduct. We've made the point. The people of this country know about this. Now let's just move ahead and support the passing of this bill. The second, of course, requires a dawning of wisdom and awakening of some hidden conscience on the part of the Congress, which right now, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't put any money on it.
Okay. You talked about how, somewhere also investor sentiment is likely to take a hit. Do you believe that we run the risk of now losing the image of, being the only bright spot in the global economy? Because it's really this lack of political consensus that seems to be derailing crucial reforms, and that somewhere is bound to tarnish India's image.
No, I mean, I'm already hearing it. I've heard this for the last 2 to 3 months with the investors who are waiting to come into India with big ticket investments, very bullish about the Indian story, especially in the context of what is happening globally, especially in the context of what's happening in China, but really deeply concerned about the political and policy risk that India still represents. And it is to that GST passing would have been an answer. And when we don't have specific laws and bills being passed that answer the specific question of policy and political risk, then we only emphasize that risk. And therefore, investors will continue to sit on the sideline. Because after the 2008 to 2010, the whole drama of how many investors lost loads of money due to scams in coal and telecom, I can tell you one thing: investors are not prepared to write a check just on the back of goodwill and hope. They want decisive policy action. They want a framework of policies and laws that are, it's in a sense money where the mouth is. Yeah, so as long as this is not done, investors will wait on the sidelines.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. The last thing we want is really investor confidence waning. My last question then, Mr. Chandrasekhar, is about the fact that, many also believe that with the elections coming up in Bihar, perhaps the government was left with no choice, and so it didn't really aggressively push through some of these reforms. Would you find any merit in that argument?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I have the privilege of engaging with the finance minister in reasonably close quarters. I think they were all very determined, very keen to have these reforms passed. It has got caught in what we can euphemistically call political football. But I mean, I don't think there was any lack of determination on the part of the government either in the last few weeks or the few months to ensure that there were decisive reforms that would drive the transformation of our economy.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.